Welcome back, everyone. Spring and summer is a time for new growth and taking bold action together, so we hope these stories will inspire you to live boldly, take wise chances, and with our friends and family make a difference together. Today we're going to be reading Sergeant Billy, the true story of the goat who went to war, by Muriel Messer and illustrated by Cass Reich. All right, so lean in with the spirit of adventure and let's get into the story. A train full of soldiers made a stop in a small prairie town. In that town, there was a girl named Daisy with a goat named Billy. Mind if we borrow your goat? One of the soldiers asked Daisy. Daisy almost said no. She was very fond of her goat, but the soldiers were going to war and they thought Billy would bring them luck. So Daisy said yes, as long as they brought Billy back after the war. The soldiers promised they would, and that's how Billy's extraordinary story began. During a long ride to training camp, Billy climbed on the seats, the luggage, and the soldiers slept, to the delight of most of the men. By the time they reached their destination, the soldiers of the 5th Battalion had become very fond of Billy. He's one of us now, an Army goat. Let's call him Private Billy. And that's how Billy joined the Army. Soon it was time to ship out to England and join the fight. The colonel ordered Billy to stay, but the soldiers of the Fighting Fifth had grown so attached to their goat that they didn't want to leave him behind, so they snuck him on board. And there was a lot of that going on, And that's how Private Billy crossed the ocean. As the war raged on and enemy troops advanced, the 5th Battalion was sent from England to France to fight the front lines. Mascots were strictly forbidden at the front, and since the soldiers had already snuck Billy over to England without permission, the colonel was watching them extra closely. But the Fighting Fifth was determined. We can easily find another colonel, but we'll never have another Billy. Well, I mean, that's true. So they bought a huge wooden crate of oranges, ate and sold all the fruit, and they then used the empty crate to smuggle Private Billy into France. And that's how Private Billy went to the front lines. Unlike many of the soldiers, Private Billy took well to life in the trenches. He didn't mind the mud, or the cold, or the noise, or the foul food, or even the rats. Yeah, goats will eat anything. Private Billy was by the soldiers' sides in victory and defeat. He was the first to befriend the nervous new recruits and to comfort those who missed their fallen friends. Instead of writing about their own hard times, the soldiers often wrote about Private Billy in letters to their loved ones back home. And this says, July 11th, 1915, somewhere in France. My dear mother, I do hope you and father have not been worrying about me, as I am getting on all right. Fortunately, we have our dear goat mascot, Billy, to keep up our morale. He gave us quite a start during night patrol yesterday. The other sentry and I mistook the sound of his snoring for that of a German patrol. Imagine our relief when we realized. Your loving son, Charlie. Still, there were some, including the colonel, who did not think a goat belonged in the trenches. We have no food or space to spare, he said. But Private Billy wasn't picky. If the food rations were low, he ate whatever he could find. Yeah, whatever he could find. Once he was even caught nibbling on some very important secret documents. This is treason, the colonel declared. So he placed the goat under arrest. And that's how Private Billy went to jail for being a spy. Without Billy to rally around, the soldiers were unhappy. They fought with each other and were bored and grumpy. The colonel was perplexed. All this because they missed their goat? So Private Billy was forgiven and returned to the 5th Battalion. The colonel's just beside himself. Private Billy became instrumental in battle. Even the colonel had to agree, and that's how Private Billy was promoted to sergeant. At Ypres, Sergeant Billy captured an enemy guardsman. At Hill 63, Sergeant Billy got trench foot. And Hill 70, Sergeant Billy was shell-shocked. At Festubert, Sergeant Billy boldly saved some soldiers' lives by headbutting them into a trench seconds before a shell exploded right where they had been standing. No matter how hard things got, the soldiers always looked after Billy, and Billy always looked out for his soldiers. For exceptional bravery in the face of danger, the monster is awarded to Sergeant Billy of the 5th Battalion, and that's how Sergeant Billy became a decorated war hero. Months, seasons, and years passed. Not everyone survived, but Billy was still with the Fighting Fifth. When the roar of the cannons finally stopped, "The war is over! Thank our lucky goat! 3 cheers for Sergeant Billy!" The voyage back was long, but the soldiers of the Fighting Fifth had a promise to keep. So, with feverish hearts, they crossed the hundreds of miles of smoldering land and the hundreds of miles of stormy sea. And that's how Billy came home. Sergeant Billy, the goat who went to war. As incredible as it may seem, the story of Sergeant Billy is real. In 1914, during World War I, the 5th Canadian Battalion acquired a goat from a young girl named Daisy Kerwin while passing through Broadview, Saskatchewan. Everything that happened to Billy in the book is true, including the fact that he returned home to Daisy in 1919 and lived out the rest of his life. Many, many animals assisted in World War I: dogs, horses, goats, cats, bears, pigeons, pigs, even a duck. Some animals like dogs, horses, and pigeons were working animals. They helped carry messages and artillery. And some animals were mascots who helped raise spirits and keep soldiers company. But no matter their role, all of them were heroes, including Billy. Billy is now a part of a permanent collection in the Broadview Museum in Saskatchewan, where you can read all about his exploits and see photos of Billy and his comrades. Because the events of this story took place a long time ago, some details in the order in which they happen are hard to confirm, but one thing is certain: Sergeant Billy was an exceptional military service animal whose story should be shared and celebrated. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story, and see you for the next one.